Why do you care so much? The question hung in the humid hospital air like an unspoken confession. The night nurse froze, her hand still adjusting the blanket over my mother's frail body. Rain drummed steadily against the window, a rhythm that seemed to count the seconds of her silence. I watched something shift behind her eyes. Not discomfort. Not deflection. Recognition. She pulled the chair closer, her movements slow and deliberate, as though approaching a memory she'd buried long ago. I learned something once, she said quietly, her voice barely rising above the monitor's beep. That love without understanding is just noise. My mother's breathing steadied, waiting. Let me tell you why I became a nurse, she continued, folding her hands with practiced calm, and why I'll never let anyone feel invisible again. Welcome to Nature's Shot Tales, where every story carries a heartbeat. If this is your first time here, consider subscribing. You're joining a family that believes in the power of true human connection. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Let's build this community together. She grew up in a town so small that everyone knew your name before you learned to spell it. The house sat wedged between a bakery that smelled of butter and dreams, and a bicycle shop that clanged with the rhythm of fixing broken things. The walls were thin, the rooms narrow, but her mother had a gift for filling every corner with laughter. We may not have much, her mother would say, tying back her hair before another long shift at the textile factory, but we have each other. And that's everything. Her father worked construction, back-breaking hours under unforgiving sun. Some nights he came home too tired to speak, but he always kissed the top of her head and ruffled her younger brother's hair. Her brother was 7, small for his age, with wide curious eyes and a habit of asking questions no one could answer. Why do stars only come out at night? Where does the wind sleep? She didn't always know the answers, but she loved that he asked. Life wasn't easy, but it was warm. Until the morning her brother couldn't get out of bed. At first, it seemed like nothing, a fever, maybe a cold. He'll be fine by tomorrow, her father said, though his voice lacked conviction. But by afternoon, her brother's skin burned like fire. His breathing came shallow and quick, each inhale a struggle. Her mother pressed a damp cloth to his forehead, whispering prayers under her breath. "Mama," the boy whispered. "Why does it hurt?" "Shua, my love. It'll pass." But it didn't. By evening, panic had crept into the house like smoke. Her mother wrapped the boy in a blanket and lifted him into her arms. He was small, but she staggered under the weight of fear. "We're going to the hospital," she said firmly. Her father grabbed his coat. She followed silently, clutching her brother's stuffed rabbit. The streets blurred past. Neighbors watched from windows but didn't offer help. No one ever did. County Hospital loomed ahead, a gray building that smelled of disinfectant and desperation. Inside, the air was cold. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. People sat in plastic chairs, faces hollow with waiting. A baby cried somewhere down the hall. Her mother approached the front desk, breathless. "Please, my son, he can't breathe properly." The clerk barely looked up. "Fill this out. Wait over there." "But he's..." "Wait over there." They sat in the corner. Minutes stretched into hours. Her brother's head rested against her mother's chest, his eyes half closed. She held his hand, whispering things she hoped would comfort him. "Am I going to be okay?" he asked quietly. She didn't know how to answer. Finally, a doctor appeared, young, hurried, eyes red from exhaustion. He examined her brother quickly, muttering medical terms that sounded like a foreign language. Acute respiratory distress. Possible bacterial infection. Needs immediate intervention. Her mother nodded, though confusion shadowed her face. "What does that mean?" she asked softly. The doctor sighed, impatient. "It means he's very sick. We'll need to run tests. Treatment will be expensive." "How expensive?" He rattled off a number that might as well have been the distance to the moon. Her mother's face went pale. I don't have that right now. Then we'll do what we can, the doctor said flatly, already turning away. Her mother grabbed his sleeve. Please. He's my son. The doctor paused, softened slightly. We'll start basic treatment. But resources are limited. And then he was gone. They sat in that corner for hours, invisible. It was near midnight when another nurse appeared. Older. Calm. Moving with the kind of patience the world had forgotten. She knelt down, not to the mother but to the boy. Hello, she said gently. What's your name? Daniel, he whispered. Daniel. That's a strong name. She smiled. I'm going to help you feel better, okay? But first, I want to explain what's happening. She spoke slowly, clearly, using words a child could understand. She told him about the medicine, the tests, what each machine did. She told the mother what to expect, what to watch for, when to worry and when to breathe. And then she said something that would echo for years. You are not alone here. The boy's breathing steadied. Her mother's tears finally fell, not from fear but relief. Daniel survived. 3 days later they brought him home, weak but alive. The house filled with laughter again. But she noticed something. In the bed next to her brother's, there had been another child, a little girl with no family visiting. That girl didn't make it home. She asked her mother why. Her mother hesitated, then said quietly, Sometimes the world isn't fair, my love. But that's why we must be kind. Always. Years passed. Life grew harder. Her father lost his job. Meals became smaller. Hope felt fragile. But her mother never stopped teaching. Everyone carries a story you don't see, she'd say. Always try to understand before judging. One evening, her mother cupped her face gently. Promise me you'll always see people, really see them. I promise, Mama. Her mother smiled. She didn't know those would become her last lessons. Because 3 months later, her mother collapsed at work. And this time, there was no gentle nurse waiting. The house grew quieter after Daniel recovered. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that pressed against your chest and made breathing feel like work. Her father came home one evening and didn't take off his boots. He just sat at the table, staring at his calloused hands. They let me go, he said finally. Said they're cutting costs. Her mother placed a hand on his shoulder. We'll manage. But management looked like splitting one chicken across 4 plates. It looked like watered-down soup and her mother pretending she wasn't hungry. I already ate, she'd lie, pushing her portion toward the children. The laughter that once filled the rooms became rare, something saved for special occasions that never came. Her father took odd jobs. Her mother worked double shifts. Still, the bills piled higher than hope. She watched her mother age in months what should have taken years. But every night before bed, her mother would still smile. We have each other, she'd whisper. That's everything. It started with headaches. Just tired, her mother insisted, rubbing her temples after another long shift. Then dizziness. Then she collapsed at the factory, her body crumpling between rows of humming machines. The call came during dinner. Her father's face went white. The phone slipped slightly in his grip. We need to go. Now. County hospital again. The same gray walls. The same fluorescent hum. The same smell of disinfectant trying to cover desperation. But this time, she wasn't a confused child. She was 16, old enough to understand fear, but not old enough to fight it. Her mother lay on a gurney in the hallway, eyes half closed, skin too pale. A nurse rushed past without looking at them. Another checked a chart and moved on. Her father stood helplessly, holding papers he didn't know how to read. Excuse me, he said to a passing doctor. My wife, she collapsed. Someone will be with you shortly. Shortly turned into hours. She sat beside her mother, holding her cold hand, remembering the gentle nurse who'd once knelt beside Daniel. Where are you now? She thought bitterly. Where are people like you when we need them? Finally, a doctor arrived, middle-aged, exhausted, moving with mechanical efficiency. He examined her mother quickly, asked rapid-fire questions her father barely understood. Pre-existing conditions? I don't know. Medications? She doesn't take any. Insurance? Silence. The doctor's expression shifted. Not cruel but resigned. We'll run basic tests. But I need to be honest with you. Treatment options will depend on what you can afford. Her father's voice cracked. What does she need? The doctor rattled off terms that sounded like another language. Scans. Procedures. Medications with names longer than sentences. How much? Her father whispered. The number hit like a fist. Her mother stirred slightly, her voice barely audible. Don't worry about the money. Mama, don't talk. Promise me. Don't go into debt for this. Her father's tears fell silently. The doctor stepped back. We'll do what we can with what's available. And she understood. What's available meant not enough. They moved her mother to a room at the end of a forgotten hallway. No one checked on them regularly. Machines beeped, but no one explained what the numbers meant. She wanted to scream. She wanted to grab every passing nurse and doctor and shake them and shout, "She's a person. She has a name. She matters." But she was 16 and powerless. So she sat and watched her mother fade. One night, her mother reached for her hand. Her grip was weak, her breathing labored. "Listen to me," she whispered. "Mama, save your strength." "No. Listen." Her mother's eyes held a fierce clarity. "People will forget you if you let them. The world moves fast. But you have to slow down. You have to see people." Tears blurred her vision. "I don't understand." "You will." Her mother smiled faintly. "Promise me you'll help people feel understood. Even when the world doesn't care. You care." "I promise." Her mother exhaled slowly, her eyes drifting closed. "Good girl." She died 3 days later. Morning light slipped through the blinds, soft and golden, as though the world didn't know it was ending. Her mother's hand went limp in hers. The monitor's steady beep flattened into a single endless tone. A nurse came in, not rushed, not unkind, just procedural. "I'm sorry for your loss." And that was it. No kneeling. No gentle words. No, "You are not alone." Just paperwork and politeness. Her father sobbed into his hands. Daniel stood frozen, too young to process. But she felt something colder than grief settle into her bones. Clarity. That day, she learned something painful. Love without understanding feels like loneliness. Her mother had loved fiercely, sacrificed endlessly. But the system didn't see her. Didn't slow down. Didn't explain. Didn't care. And she died feeling invisible. She stood in the hallway long after they'd taken the body away, staring at the empty room. A decision crystallized, sharp and unshakable. If I ever have the chance, I'll become the person who stays. Who explains. Who sees. She didn't know how yet. But she knew why. Because love wasn't enough. Understanding was the bridge between caring and healing. And she would build that bridge, even if it took everything. The hallway stretched long and silent ahead. She walked forward. The years that followed were brutal. She worked mornings at a coffee shop, afternoons cleaning office buildings, nights studying anatomy by dim lamplight until words blurred into meaningless shapes. Her father wanted her to find something easier. "You're exhausted," he'd say, worry etched deep in his face. "I made a promise, Papa." He understood. He always did. Daniel, now in high school, would quiz her sometimes. Holding up flashcards, mispronouncing medical terms until they both laughed. "Someday," he said, "you're going to be the kind of nurse Mama needed." She held those words close on the hard days. And there were many hard days. Entrance exams, rejections, reapplications, student loans that felt like chains. But she kept moving forward, because stopping meant forgetting, and she'd promised never to forget. Her first week at City Memorial Hospital was chaos dressed in sterile white. Machines beeped in relentless rhythm. Alarms screamed from every direction. Doctors barked orders. Nurses moved like soldiers in a war no one could win. She tried to keep up, tried to remember procedures, medication names, protocol after protocol. But what struck her most wasn't the complexity. It was the coldness. Patients became room numbers. Families became obstacles. Questions became annoyances. One evening she passed the break room and heard two nurses venting. "Room 312 is impossible," one groaned. "She asks a million questions. Can't she just trust us and let us work?" The other laughed. "Some people just don't get it." Something tightened in her chest. She glanced at the chart outside room 312. Margaret Torres. 68. Post-op recovery. She hesitated, then pushed the door open. The woman lay propped against pillows, her face lined with worry, and 4 dripped steadily beside her. Monitors blinked cold blue numbers. She looked up when the door opened, eyes wary. "I'm sorry," Margaret said quickly. "I know I ask too much." "You don't." The woman blinked, surprised. She pulled a chair close and sat down, something she'd noticed most nurses didn't do. "What would you like to know?" she asked gently. Margaret hesitated, as if testing whether the offer was real. "The doctor said something about drainage and infection risk. But I didn't understand what he meant. And I don't want to bother anyone." "You're not bothering me," she explained slowly, clearly, used simple words, drew a small diagram on the back of a napkin. Margaret's shoulders relaxed with every sentence. "So, it's normal for it to feel sore?" "Completely normal." "And the tube will come out in a few days?" "Yes. I'll make sure someone explains before it happens." Margaret's eyes glistened. "Thank you. I was so scared. I thought something was wrong and no one was telling me." She reached out and gently squeezed the woman's hand. "You're not alone here," she said softly. The words came without thinking, an echo from a lifetime ago. Margaret smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You remind me of someone kind I knew once." She smiled back, though her own throat tightened. "You remind me of someone too." That night, walking through the quiet corridors after her shift, something shifted inside her. She'd spent years chasing this career, driven by grief and promise. But now she understood something deeper. Medicine could heal wounds, but understanding healed fear. And fear, left untreated, was its own kind of suffering. Months passed. She became known as the nurse who stayed late, who explained things twice, who sat when others stood, who listened when others rushed. Some colleagues thought she was too soft. "You'll burn out," one warned. But she didn't feel like she was burning out. She felt like she was finally doing what mattered. Then came the rainy evening that brought everything full circle. The patient was older, frail, her breathing labored. The family sat vigil beside her, exhausted, frightened, holding onto hope like a fragile thread. She adjusted the blanket, checked the monitors, whispered reassurances. The daughter watched her with quiet gratitude. And the patient, the mother, reached for her hand. "You are kind," the woman whispered. "Kinder than most people I've met." She smiled gently. Then the question came. "Why do you care so much? You treat us like family." She froze. For a moment she was 16 again, standing in a hallway, watching her mother disappear behind procedural coldness. She pulled a chair closer and sat down. "I learned a long time ago," she said quietly, "that love only makes sense when you truly understand someone." And she told them everything. When she finished, the room was silent except for the rain softening against the window. The daughter's eyes were wet. The mother's grip on her hand had tightened. "That's why you stay," the mother whispered. She nodded. "Yes, because medicine saved my brother. But understanding could have saved my mother from feeling alone." Her voice wavered slightly. "She died thinking no one cared. And I swore that no one in my care would ever feel invisible." The daughter wiped her eyes. "Thank you. For seeing her. For seeing us." She smiled softly, standing to adjust the for one last time. "When you truly understand someone," she said gently, "loving them becomes easy." Later, as she dimmed the lights and prepared to leave, the daughter stopped her at the door. "What was your mother's name?" She paused. "Elena." "I'll remember her," the daughter said. "Because of you, I'll remember her." Something warm and painful blossomed in her chest. She nodded, unable to speak, and stepped into the hallway. Outside, the rain had stopped. The hospital settled into its late-night rhythm. Quiet beeps, distant footsteps, the hum of machines keeping vigil. She walked slowly toward the exit, feeling lighter than she had in years. Her mother's voice echoed faintly in her memory. "Promise me you'll help people feel understood." "I did, Mama," she whispered into the stillness. "I kept my promise." And for the first time since that terrible morning years ago, the weight of grief felt less like a burden. It felt like purpose. The doors slid open. Cool night air filled her lungs. She stepped forward into the quiet dark, carrying her mother's love forward. One gentle explanation, one patient moment, one understood heart at a time. Because love without understanding was loneliness. But understanding transformed love into healing. And that was everything. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to feel understood today. Your support keeps these stories alive. Tell me in the comments, what moment moved you most? I read every single one. Until next time.